Adrian.
I'm Adrian Jasper, and I'm born and raised here in Sacramento, California, and I'm also a poet and spoken word artist. And I became Muslim in June of 1998. And when I was 21, I just started, there was just, I think the Desert Storm War was going on. There was just different stuff going on in the world, and I was like, okay, I need to get some religion before it's too late. You know, I had that type of fear, so I just started searching. And so I started watching this, late night Christian shows, and so that was like my church then, the Shepherd's Chapel. I would watch it every night, and that was my church. And so I started to want to know more about it. Then I started praying regularly. I started establishing regular prayer. So every night I would pray. And then, in the middle of praying, it's like, okay, am I supposed to pray to God or Jesus or the Holy Spirit? So I kind of got confused. So one night in the middle of prayer, I actually stopped because I was afraid of getting it wrong. So I didn't know one thing I did know was that I didn't want to offend God. That's all I do. So I just prayed to him to direct me to where he wanted me to be. That was my prayer. And so after that, I started running into Muslims like randomly in the street. They were like, here's a book. I'm like, okay. And that kept happening. And then a show on Access Sacramento came on. It was titled Islam in Focus. So I started watching that. And, so I got more curious about Islam. And then I wrote a letter to a mosque downtown, V Street Mosque, and I asked them what their view of Jesus was. And so about a month or two later, they sent me this book titled Jesus, Prophet of Islam. And after I read that, it just explained, it talked about monotheism, and it resonated with me. It just resonated with my spirit more. So then I wanted to read the Quran. And so when I read the Quran, it just felt organic to me. And I said, okay, I was 21 at the time. I said, okay, when I'm ready, this is the path that I'm going to take, but I'm not ready yet. I guess I got, a little more partying and whatever. I was 21. So then, when I was 28, life starts kicking you around. It's like, okay, I gotta really, start practicing something because I needed some order. And what Islam brought to me was order, prayer every day and fasting, and it just had a prescription for every area of your life. How you conduct, relationships with your parents, with siblings and in business, and it just gave me an order that I could adhere to that had divine guidance that superseded my own, because at my own, on your own, left to my own devices, you could, make anything what you want it to be, and but I wanted God guidance. So that's when I became Muslim at 28. So.
Thank you for sharing that. Good afternoon. My name is Muhammad Saifullah. I'm the Communications and Outreach Coordinator for CARE Sacramento. CARE stands for Council on American Islamic Relations, so it's like a Muslim civil rights organization. Let's see, I just moved out here. I'm from Kentucky. That's where I went to school. I went to school at the University of Kentucky. I played football there. I got a major in exercise science and a minor in Islamic studies. And I'm just going to tell you how I got out here real quick. It's crazy. I was at, everybody remember Muhammad Ali passing last year, right? So of course he's from Kentucky, so his funeral was in Kentucky. And I remember after the ceremony, I was standing outside with some people, and the executive director of CARE was there, the guy from Sacramento. And I'm sitting there talking to him, and so some people standing next to us, and they get interviewed, and kind of just me and him looking at each other. It's kind of awkward. So he asked me, what am I doing? I was like, I just graduated school, looking for a job. He's like, you want to come out to Cali? I'm like, of course. Everybody from the South wants to come to California. It's like everybody thinks I made it now. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, dude, I work for a nonprofit. I haven't made it yet. That's what they think. So that's how I got out here. He offered me the job and I took it. So now I'm out here in Sacramento. and it's beautiful out here. So I guess my story is kind of rough. How I got to here right now is kind of rough, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get into it. I was about 19, and well, I'll start before that. So both my parents are converts. My dad and my mother converted when they were in college. Anybody heard of Malcolm X? Yeah, Malcolm X. Okay. So my dad read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and that was pretty much it for him. That was all he needed to read. Back in the 90s, that was when like that Black Power movement was going on. So he got that book, and that was it for him. So then he met my mother, taught my mother, and so my mother became Muslim as well. So me and my two sisters, we were born Muslim. Then throughout my life, I never really practiced. You know, I wasn't practicing Muslim really until about 19. So I kind of just, there's a saying in Islam that your own religion and your friends. So like whatever your friends do, that's gonna be what you do. So that's kind of what I was doing. I wasn't really into praying and fasting and doing all this stuff. So then when it came about 19, I'm getting ready to go play football for the University of Kentucky. It's right before I got there. I went to this party. So I walked into this party, and all my friends from high school were there, and this was the first time I was like drunk and high at the same time. I know that's bad because you're supposed to be Muslim, you're not supposed to drink and all that good stuff. But that's what I was doing. So I walked into the party, everybody's dapping me up because I don't drink and I don't smoke, but this time I was. Everybody's like, "Oh yeah, we got him, yeah." So everybody's dapping me up, this and that, and then all I remember is people started running. So we were at a house party, everybody was underage. All I remember is everybody just started running, and saying the police were there. So I started running as well. So I came into this car. The car that I drove there was my girlfriend at the time. That was her car and two other people that came with us. So I'm trying to find them, and we look at her. She's laying on the ground, and she looks like she's had too much to drink. She can't move. So I'm trying to figure out what to do. So we just take her, we grab her, we throw her in the back of the car. So we're about to take off. So we're about to take off, and then the officer knocks on the window as soon as I'm about to take off. So I roll down the window, and the officer looks at me, and he takes his flashlight and he puts it in the back seat, and he sees her, and he's like, "Where you guys going?" I was like, "Home." He's like, "All right." He's like, "Who's this?" I was like, "That's my girlfriend." He was like, "How old is she?" And nobody said anything. I didn't say anything, nobody else said anything. So then, he asked me again, nobody said anything. And he asked me again, nobody said anything. Finally, I was like, "Officer, I'm about to take her home to her dad right now." So he's looking at me, everybody's looking at me. He's like, "Are you straight to drive?" I was like, "Yeah." And he knows I'm not straight to drive. I was like, "Yeah, I'm good to drive." He's like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Say the alphabet backwards from Z to A." I don't even know if they're allowed to do that. Are they allowed to do that?
I don't think so.
That's
I don't even know that right now.
That's Kentucky for you. So he tells me to say the alphabet backwards from Z to A, and in that moment, I said it back without stuttering. So that was enough for me. Everybody was kind of looking at me like they couldn't believe it. The cops looking at me like, he doesn't know what's going on. He wasn't even supposed to do that, right? So then he lets me go. So I'm driving, and there's this moment where everybody's asleep except for me, and I'm driving. I'm just by myself, and I'm like, let me try that again. I tried it again, I couldn't do it. So then that's when I was like, all right, I need to get my life together. You understand? So I'm on my way back home. That was pretty much my turning point right there. That's when I was like, okay, I don't know what this is about, but I'm gonna start learning about this. And I didn't just start studying Islam. I was trying to learn about everything. The majority of my family's Christian, so I started studying different translations of the Bible. The Torah that was translated into English, I started studying that as well. And so yeah, that's how I came. I guess you could say I came back. So yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Let's try it this way. I'm Yusuf Ali, and I would like to greet you all in peace. Assalamu alaikum. All right, you know that, huh? That's a good start. My journey in Islam is a very, very interesting one. Happened about 40 years ago in maybe a setting like this. I was a student at the University of Oregon. And I had an English course. Now, I wasn't there for academics. I was there like in sports, football players. So I was a little challenged in the academics. So they had class to help us catch up, you know. And so we had this one course, and the professor used to write on the board different quotes from, like, say, Voltaire, like the brother here quoted, and they would just have us elaborate, write an essay on what you think this means to you in your own words. And so I remember writing my essay. I don't quite remember what the quote was, but the professor was very, very impressed. And so he took a very special interest in me. And I remember the final exam, and I remember this quote well. There was about 3 or 4 different quotes that were on the board, and one of them was that man functions using only 1/10 of his total mental capacity. And I said, wow, 1/10. We've sent man to the moon, and we've done all of these marvelous discoveries just using 1/10 of our abilities. What if we can tap into 2/10, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10? You know, wow, where could we be? And so that fascinated me to the core. And from that point, my life was in search of what that other 2, 3, 4 potential and capacity in us was. And so it led me through Eastern thought, Eastern traditions. I remember studying the Jain tradition, Buddhism, Hinduism. If it was Eastern thought, I was into it. And there was just something to the extreme of those teachings that didn't quite give me a balance. And so I remember transferring from Oregon to San Diego State, and I met this young lady, and the introduction was kind of contentious. You know, I gave her a common greeting, like, what's happening? And she looked me up and down and said, brother, what's happening with you ain't even happening with me. And nobody was around, so I didn't take to it. I was just a feisty young lady. And so I said, well, what does it look like happening with me? She said, oh, it looks like you in the partying, having a good time, getting high, you're chasing a girl. And I'm like, yeah, well, who is it? And I said, well, what's happening with you? Because she was dressed and looked like, to me, a black gypsy. Well, what's happening with you? And she said, well, I'm a Muslim. And when she said that, all my guards just went down, and I said, is that the religion of Muhammad Ali? Because that was my hero. All-time hero, still is, even grew up to become friends and in his intimate circle throughout life. And she said, yes. And I said, well, I'm interested. And so she said, okay, I'll have my husband pick you up Wednesday night, he'll bring you to a meeting. So I went to that meeting, and it was a meeting of the Nation of Islam. Brother said Malcolm. Malcolm was a member of the Nation of Islam. The Nation of Islam gave us leaders like Malcolm and Muhammad Ali and Minister Louis Farrakhan, and the greatest in my estimation was Imam Warithdin Muhammad. And so when I went to that meeting, the first lesson that they were teaching that day was man means mind. And so now I'm already on this path of mind. What is the mind? And so Imam Muhammad began to redefine us as human beings, that we are not physical beings at all. That is not our true identity. Our true identity is the mind, and that man comes from a Sanskrit term, manas, which means the thinking being. And so we got man means mind. As a man thinketh, so is he. I think, therefore I am. So that took the focus off the physical and put it where it needs to be, in the mental and in the spiritual. So I remember sitting in on that lecture getting goose pimples, and I'm like, wow, this is like, I just walked into where I was meant to be at that particular time. And so from that, they asked, for those of you that heard this teaching and believe it to be true, would you stand up? So I stood up. And they said, for those of you that want to embrace this teaching and grow further along in this teaching, remain standing and the rest may sit. I remained standing. and have been standing to this day. And my journey to Islam was that spiritual. They said Allah is one, which means creation is one. There's only one creation. And if creation is one, then that all human beings of this creation must be one. So it began to break down those racial barriers, those racial tensions, and put the identity where it belongs. A man's knowledge, his character, is your true identity. So as I began to grow in Islam, I had the fortune of meeting Muhammad Ali as a photographer and was invited into his circle to travel with him. So that gave me the backstage pass, the VIP pass, into a whole lot of different circles, even that of Mr. Donald Trump, twice. And so I began to travel the world and begin to see Islam practiced throughout the world, throughout Asia, the Middle East. And I began to understand that the basic fundamental tenets of Islam was like universal. There's some things you must know that brings you into the circle that everybody, every Muslim on the planet knows. So it was that connection, that link. Okay, I know these basic fundamentals. I know how to pray. I know this or that. So if I walked into a mosque in Indonesia, I knew that I knew what the basics were, how things would go. And there was this great welcoming and opening. You know, brother, from America, this is unique, strange. That's a Christian country. How did you become Muslim? Your name is Ali. Do you know Muhammad Ali? Everybody knew Muhammad Ali. And so it was what can I say? It's been the greatest experience in my life. The questions here are, have you ever doubted your faith? Never. I mean, it's opened up so many doors in so many different countries among so many people. In fact, I just returned from Senegal in December. The morning Trump got elected, I was on my way to Senegal, so I missed all of the shutdowns of the freeways and so forth. I wasn't getting reports from my wife. And while in Senegal, I went to the Gambia. And the Gambia was special based on my sister's poem here. We come from Africa because Gambia is where the city of Juffure, or the village of Juffure, which takes us back to the movie Roots and Kunta Kinte. And so I got to visit that village, and it was like a coming full circle for me, because Roots really like put our struggle as a people on the map, what we went through slavery, the transatlantic slave trade and slavery, and like open it up to the whole world. And you know that in the movie, Kunta Kinte was a Muslim. So now I find as an African American, my history just didn't begin in slavery, but had a great tradition in Africa from Juffure. We can talk about the Moors of Spain and the African contribution to that great civilization. We can talk about the great civilizations of Mali, Songhai, and Timbuktu, African civilizations at the peak of our glory, when Europe, in fact, according to European historians, was in their dark ages. So this was my history, and as an African American, beginning to pick up the pieces of what we wore and what we can potentially become in the future, Islam was just the perfect fit for me. And hopefully, if you have any further questions, I'll be glad to answer them afterwards, but my time is up. Thank you.
Were we supposed to answer all the questions? Oh,
No, so what we'll do is after all the panelists have had a chance to speak, then I'll go through and ask these questions. We can answer them with the leftover time. But first, I want everyone to be able to have a chance to kind of talk.
That makes it even better.
I'll try that one.
No, I got it back.
There we go.
So my name is Parrish Gary. I am the Dean of Enrollment Services here at American River College. So I guess I'll see some of you guys around campus at some points. So my story, I should have went first. Because and I'm like that you use the word intersectionality in the beginning of the whole presentation, because I am very much in the intersection of who I am. So here's my story. So I'm from New Jersey. My mom's African American and white. My dad's Puerto Rican, so I'm actually Puerto Rican, black, and white. My mom's from Virginia. My mom's from Puerto Rico. So what's funny is my dad was actually Muslim. How that happened, I have no idea. Most of his family, I was told he was Catholic. We're Catholic. So things happened, and then my family, so I'm born, and my mom originally named me Fuquan. Father Ruyu Quinu Ala Nations, my original name. But then we moved to California because my parents separated. And we get to California, and my mom goes, "You're gonna have a struggle with your name. Your middle name's Parish," because it goes along with the guarding before the church in the Catholic sense. So we're gonna have Parish go first. So okay, fine. So I'm Parish when I go to school, even though I understand my name's Quan. I have this other background that I understand. So then I go throughout high school. I end up going to college. College experience was actually in Alabama, and I went to a Seventh-day Adventist college. So if anybody knows the Seventh-day Adventist religion, it is it's Christian for the most part, but it's very strict in very certain ways. On Friday, you start worship, and then worship doesn't end until Saturday night. So that's a different perspective. So I learned, the Seventh-day Adventist beliefs, but I end up leaving and going to Howard, and I do some other things, and then I come back to California after I finish college. So I read the Bible probably like 10 times from front to back. And each time I figure or I see different religions within the Bible. You'll see paganism, you'll see Catholic, you'll see Judaism, you'll find Muslim, you'll like Abshad, Meshach, and Abednego. When they had to pray a certain amount of times a day, and they had to do it in a room facing a certain way. People don't probably catch on to that, but what were they doing then? Why would they have to go so many times a day, facing a certain way, praying throughout the day? But it's in the Christian Bible. So there's other stories that I can refer to, so I'm reading the Bible and I'm like, okay. So at the end of all that, let's just fast forward, I decide, well, what intersection do I really familiarize myself with? How do I see my faith? What is my faith? And as everybody has already stated, it's a journey. It's a continual journey. And I think that's what's great about being Muslim or practicing the faith is that it's a continual journey. You're never going to get anything right. I mean, he without sin cast the first stone, and I don't think nobody can do that in here. So my understanding of being Muslim is actually the way that you carry yourself, the faith that you have, and in doing so, and start to answer some of the questions, I found that divine ability to have a divine decree, which is a belief within the Muslim structure, have divine decree and have an understanding that there's good and there's bad, and it's the way that you interact with those things that kind of define who you are, and that's what I like about the faith, that I get to define who I am, that it's just not your faith or your religion or your color or your creed or your gender, it's who you are, and so it's beyond the house. So that's just a short snippet. And to be honest, as of like 2 years ago, I stated my belief. I went to a mosque and I decided, you know what, this is where I'm supposed to be after doing a lot of soul searching and journey. So that's it. I'll let the moderator ask this question so that we can at least get some of those in.
So, thank you. Okay, thank you so much. So, for the most part, seems like we